Okay, hi everyone. Today I'll be talking about Radiant Earth, where I work, and our transition from the platform of Radiant MLHub to Source Cooperative. I'm Michelle Roby. Radiant MLHub, some of you may already know about this platform, was developed in December 2019, and the intentionality behind this was there was a deep need for more training data sets for machine learning for geospatial or observation data. So the team back in 2019 decided, let's make more training data sets for machine learning and Earth observation, and let's make a place where we can put that data that we're creating as well as training data sets that were similar to the training data sets that we were creating. So Radiant MLHub was born from Radiant Earth. Overall, in the last few years during its life, it has been pretty successful. Over 6,500 users across 159 countries. The dataset downloads metric, take it as you will, it's not the most informative because the datasets were often clumped all together, and so people would maybe download a segment of data if they had an area of interest that was outside of the entire data set. Some of our data sets are continent-wide, so if they didn't download the entire data set, it's not included in this, so the metric's not the most helpful, but it gives you an idea of how involved people were with Radiant MLHub. But recently we discovered that there's a few things that weren't quite working the way that was intended with Radiant MLHub, and we decided that we wanted to do more and shift our purpose to make more of an impact. So some things that did work with Radiant MLHub, one thing that really sticks out that we really value is it was perceived as, and still is, as a neutral arbiter and steward of the data. So since we are a nonprofit, we're not affiliated with a specific government or university or company, and so this place has data from lots of different data sources, and it allows a user to go to one place and get data from many different sources and purposes, and that has been a real benefit of Radiant MLHub that people really like and praise. So that's something that we've continued to value and will pull into Source Cooperative. The other big thing that has worked well is the creation of data sets, training data sets for low and middle income countries, and actually using that in those countries. So something we've done with Radiant Earth is put on challenges, like model building challenges in low and middle income countries, and have prizes for the winners of these challenges. And those are often people in those countries that are winning these challenges. And so expanding the user base of the data was a really big intentionality behind Radiant MLHub, and that has been successful. I won't spend too much time on the challenges, but it is important to discuss the reasons why we're shifting away from Radiant MLHub to Source Cooperative. The one big thing was the metadata requirements that we use to onboard new data sets we discovered was too rigid. On the onset, we decided to use Stack Spatiotemporal Asset Catalog to catalog all of our training data sets. But through the process, we learned that the way training data is and the way that Stack is, and the way we utilize Stack was just too complicated to onboard data, and so we had this really complicated and rigid way that Stack had to be used for these training data sets, and it took a long time for a data set to be prepared in the way that it needed to be on Radiant MLHub. I won't get into too much of the details, mainly because I don't fully understand them all, but since we had a huge bottleneck of people who wanted to put data on Radiant MLHub but could not because they themselves didn't have the time to put them in the right format, and our engineering team didn't have the time to do so either. So it created a bottleneck, and we weren't getting enough data sets onto Radiant MLHub, and so we had to take a step back and say, what needs to change? So that was a big issue. And then the other big issue was that the way that the API was didn't allow for larger data sets, so it just didn't scale properly. And we also had a lot of issues with the larger data sets being downloaded. Recently, though, we worked with Planet to upload a 100 terabyte data set onto Source Cooperative, and it worked totally fine, like super speedy, especially relative to how Radiant MLHub was working. That would have never been able to be possible on Radiant MLHub, and so it's exciting to be shifting towards something that seems to be able to scale much better. So I've been mentioning it throughout this presentation, but Source Cooperative is the name of our new site where it's a data utility is how we're viewing it. And the name is intentionally not about machine learning data. So we are, instead of focusing on machine learning's explicit data, we're wanting to shift to focusing more on making data as easy as possible to share. So less on the type of data and more on the sharing capabilities. So sharing data over HTTP as easily as possible. And so that is the new focus. And it's also a generic enough name that's not necessarily just earth science data either. Right now, because of our field and our connections, most of the data in there is earth observation data, but there's a possibility to expand past that because the focus is more about the sharing of the data and the ease of that, and less about specific use cases or specific types of data. So I've alluded to both of these a little, but the two major objectives that we have with Source Cooperative are, one, to make it as easy as possible to both publish and access data, and the second being the crossbreeding of data sources and types of data that we're looking at. So a mix from NGOs, universities, government, and private companies, and even individuals that just want to upload their data and have a data set and want to host it somewhere, but don't want to spin up their entire own platform or create some sort of dashboard for it. Just a place where a single data set can live in conjunction with many other trusted data sets. More specifically for the data provider side of things, as mentioned earlier, we want to make it trivially easy for them to upload data. So a lot of times, there's big barriers into getting data out, and so we just want to simplify that. Something I haven't mentioned yet is we are, instead of having it be as like everything open and free, no exceptions, we are wanting to shift the paradigm a little bit and let the data provider decide how open that they want the data set to be. And this will be data set by data set. So if an organization has one data set where they say, hey, like anyone can have this, it's totally fine, but they have another one that says, we actually just want to share these with these specific partners or this specific other organization that we work with, and we want to use Source as the mediator for that, that's also an option. And there's certain data sets too. An example we use sometimes is like a nature conservancy organization might have some endangered species data set that they have, and they don't necessarily want that out for anyone to see. In the case of someone wanting to poach and hunt these endangered species, but they might want to share it with this specific organization. So we want the data set providers to make those decisions based on their data. We don't know what's best for them, so we want Source to be a place where they can decide that for themselves. We also want to have Source, the intentionality is that they can also have the option if they want to charge for data. So there are a lot of data sets out there that might be able to be hosted on the web if there's a way that the producer could get their money back for it. And we're not saying it has to be a big subscription. We're not saying anyone that gets onto Source has to pay. It'll be per data set. And so if someone has a data set that they want to charge for, we're going to let them do that. And if you don't want to pay for it, but you want other data from Source, that you can access the free data still. So that's our vision on the data provider side. On the data user side, we're trying to create this data searching environment that, as alluded to before, has a wide variety of data products. They can find the data, the metadata associated with the data products with ease. So there are some data sets we have in Source Cooperative right now that use stack catalogs, and they have information associated with that makes it very searchable. We also have a README, and I'll show you a little bit of the interface after this. A README where kind of like, it has kind of a GitHub style, and you'll see that, but with information where they can put any papers that are associated with this data set, or demos, or tools, or anything, a place where it all lives together. And then at the end of the day, we also want data users to have empowerment to publish their own data sets as well. So often we have this line of data sets that we get from the government, and then it goes to a user, but users are making their own data sets. We all have probably made a data set in this room of maybe we ran an NDVI and we have this cool new product, or we've mapped kelp in the ocean, and we want to do something with that data, or some grants require you to put it online these days. And so this can also serve as a place for an individual to put their data back on the web. So this is just a little screenshot of what the data repositories page looks like right now. We're using that repositories kind of concept similar to GitHub. So you'll see the listing of the different repositories, so the different data sets, and then right to the right is the producer, so the organization or individual that uploaded that data set. This one, I hope Chris doesn't mind using his profile, but Chris Holmes has recently uploaded a few data sets onto Source Cooperative. The little banner at the top is saying we're in beta because soon, well, we're in kind of a private beta right now, but the link is out there. So we're not tweeting about it, but it's out there. You can access it right now on your computer. So we have someone's profile, and it lists all of their repositories or data sets that they have uploaded to Source, and you can click through them and see the data and see the README. So this is another one, the Planet data set that I mentioned earlier, Planet's profile, and then they have this, it's called Rapid AI for EO, and it's a land cover, land use data set for Europe. And so right now we're under the Browse tab, and so this is where we're looking right into the bucket. We can see the data that they've uploaded and click through it. If you hit next, this is just a screenshot, but if you were to hit next or click into any of the imagery or the source files, you could see the data and download it right there. On the README page, so if you click the README tab, they uploaded a documentation PDF and it turned into a README. And so you can style it however you'd like. It's a markdown file, just like in GitHub. And so you can include any information that you want a user to have about that data. And at the bottom, it might be kind of hard to see, but there's a link station. And one of the links here is to a stack browser. Right now, this is hard-coded, but a functionality that we're wanting to have is to be able to have that automated. That is in our engineering plan. But right now, if you click on the Stack Browser link, it'll bring you to the Stack Browser for this data set. And so just a way to better visualize the data and utilize Stack right within Source. So some of these intended features I've mentioned, but just as a kind of like an overarching to finish up, some of these things we're working on or intend to do but have not done yet. So intelligent repository scanning. So being able to take a data set and scan it for a stack catalog and be able to take that stack catalog and generate a stack browser or potentially a stack API. So these sorts of things are things we want to be able to do with Source automatically when a data set comes in. Thank you. Another thing that we're looking at, as I mentioned, is having a range of openness to the data. So anywhere from private, maybe it's being shared with one or other organization, or a fully public data set, open for anyone to see and download. The option for data publishers to charge for the data set if they choose to. And this last one that I hadn't mentioned yet, BYOB model, so bring your own bucket option, allowing data providers to be able, right now most of the data that is, or all of the data that's in Source is hosted in our own bucket in AWS, but we want to have the option for if someone has data stored in Azure, actually some of ours is in Azure, but if let's say someone has something in Azure and they don't want to transfer the ownership, but they want to host it on Source Cooperative, we will have functionality that allows them to still keep that data in their own hosting and still have it show up on Source Cooperative too. So that's coming. Some more intended features, but more on the data user side or the searching for data side. The first one we do have functionality in, which is each data product gets a URL, which can easily be shared around, and that's already happening, and yeah, it's working. And then the other one that is very simple, but we just haven't had the engineering time to implement, is multiple methods of searching, easy like through tags and through data types and keywords and these sorts of things. So I share that all because we have opened up the beta.source.coop. You can find it through our website. There's a URL at the end, but right now it's open. Our official public beta release is at the end of the month, but we decided, hey, why not just open it up? People at Phosphor-G might want to see it, might want to click around, so that's open now. And we created this GitHub repository that allows for people to see our roadmap. So the public beta milestone has a few issues in there that we say, hey, we're going to plan to get these things done by the end of the month. And then in the to be determined milestone, we have a bunch of other issues that we know are important, we know we want to integrate, but we don't have the time to finish it before our public beta. And so we put these there for all of y'all to look through, see where we're heading. You're welcome to open your own issue and say, hey, I noticed you're not thinking about adding this feature. Why don't you? Or you can upvote ones that you see as higher priorities so that we can know that that's something that people want and we can work on those earlier. And yeah, it's just a good place for you to go and have a discussion or say, hey, by the way, I've actually tried doing this, it doesn't work, or this is how I did it. So that's a way that you can get involved. If you want to become a beta tester, we have this form at source.coop. At source.coop, there's survey link, a link to beta, and it'd be great if you're wanting to stay involved and hear more about Source as it goes on, fill out the form, and especially if you want to have a data set hosted on Source. So get involved. We're here. We're hosting all sorts of data, and we're, happy to host your data.